They don't want to work. They're not motivated. They're not willing to work together. They're selfish. I sat down with Isaac and I sat down with Isabel.
I think like a week before graduation was when I was like, oh shit, like I have to start applying soon. Like
they were gonna offer me more money than what I make now, and I chose the work-life balance over working more and earning more.
This is not 1995. This is not the same environment. There's a lot of options for this generation that's not just all about finding a career for 30 years. We say this generation doesn't work, we say this generation doesn't show up, and then we do things that don't allow them to show up or do the work, and we prove ourselves right. Organizations tell me all the time that they hate Gen Z. They're lazy, they don't show up, they're unreliable, they don't want to put in the hours. Well, today we're actually pulling back the curtain. We are actually going to talk to Gen Z and see if those things are reality or if they're a myth. We talked to two different Gen Zers and I asked them to have two different lenses. One from their experience, but also they have a network of Gen Zers that ultimately I want them to kind of speak from a floodlight approach. So I asked them when we talked to them to take a look at kind of from a bifurcated approach. I will tell you that some of the outcomes are going to be shocking to you. I will tell you that sometimes it's not about Gen Z, sometimes it's about you and your organization. Let's dive into this. I'm Chad Cardin. For over 2.5 decades, I've helped organizations tackle and solve some of their biggest problems. And today, one of their biggest problems is Gen Z. Here's some interesting stats. The U.S. Department of Labor, we just pulled this up yesterday. The U.S. Department of Labor says that right now, Gen Z makes up about 18% of the workforce. 5 years ago, it was 5%. In 2025, it's going to be almost up to 30% of the workforce will be Gen Z by 2025. What does that mean? Gen Z's not going away, right? So how do we work with them as we move forward? Another one is that Gen Z, another statistic says that Gen Z, 72% have considered leaving their job due to a lack of flexibility in work policy. Their number one priority when choosing a job is work-life balance. According to McKinsey, 77% of Gen Z say work-life balance is a top priority when choosing a job. So ultimately, Gen Z is not going away, and I think it's time that organizations really step up and look at what they can do to really find ways to work together with Gen Z that ultimately create a win-win-win situation. A win for this generation, a win for the organization, and a win for the results that organizations are trying to create with the roles that Gen Z play. Here's another interesting thing about Gen Z. I don't think that Gen Z is an anomaly. I don't think that they are by themselves. I think that every generation goes through this. I believe when boomers started in the workforce, they said the same things about them as they're doing about Gen Z. They don't want to work. They're not motivated. They're not willing to work together. They're selfish. I believe that Gen Z is just a natural progression in the workplace. And so what I did is I just decided to talk to some people in Gen Z. And what we have found, and we actually have a few clips that we're going to go through right here, what we have found is that it's very dangerous and irresponsible to lump Gen Z into one bucket. There are many different personalities that Gen Z takes on, so we just thought, let's hear it for ourselves. Let's take a look at a few of these clips, and let's decide for ourselves what we can do to create a win-win-win situation. So as I mentioned, I just sat down with a couple of Gen Zers. I sat down with Isaac, and I sat down with Isabel. And in those interviews, we talked about a lot of different topics. One of the topics was their experience in finding their first job right out of college. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
I think like a week before graduation was when I was like, oh shit, like I have to start applying soon. Like, so graduated in May. I think I applied for like 50 jobs.
Okay.
And I always like, I didn't really have the best grades in college, obviously. A lot of my classes were like just 4 tests and that's your only grade, like no homework or anything. So I didn't really have the best grades. I was more of like a C's get degrees type of girl.
Yeah.
So for applying for jobs, I was like scared of how many were going to ask for my transcript because I was like, okay, that immediately is going to throw me out then. I think out of like honestly 40 something jobs I applied for, only one of them asked for my transcript. And I was like, okay, this is great.
Yeah.
But out of those 40 something, I think I interviewed at only 3 places. So,
Okay.
and it took forever to hear back. So,
So let's say you got 3 interviews, right?
yep.
Of the ones that you didn't get an interview, did they ghost you? Was there communication? Was it all over the board? What was that experience?
That was a really hard part about it too, because I think probably like 5 got back to me and said, we decided to move on with other applicants. And like, if I only applied for like 5 jobs and those 5 jobs were going to ghost me, I'd be sitting and waiting there for like weeks waiting for something back.
Right.
Yeah. Majority like just ghosted me,
Okay.
which that sucked because like when I'm in an interview process and a job I applied for, I really, really wanted that one. Like I thought I'd be perfect for it. Like you're talking to the employer about setting up your 3rd round interview, which is the last interview, but you're still waiting to hear back if this one job is going to get back to you, and then they just end up ghosting you, and it just like wastes a lot of time.
Something interesting when I talked to Isabel about her job hunt and what happens with her first experience of finding a job right out of college. Here are a couple things that really elevated for me when I was having this conversation with her. Number one is that a lot of times organizations will come and say that Gen Z doesn't show up, or we hired somebody, or we set up an interview and they just ghosted us. My take is, and my question is where did they learn that? Isabel had 40 different applicants out there and only 5. She interviewed 3 different places and only 5 organizations got back to her. So you want a law of reciprocity? You want this generation to step up and actually show up? Then start acting and modeling what you expect from them. If organizations don't have the common courtesy to get back to Gen Zers, so 30 some organizations did not get back to Isabel, but you expect them to show up, you got to change your mindset. That's one. The second thing is when you're looking at their responses, they were very generic in general. Now, I understand that the argument is that organizations get a lot of applications. Fine. They get a lot of applicants. Fine. But have the common courtesy to potentially put a little bit of a human touch on your responses. 1, respond. 2, put a human touch on it and potentially give them some feedback on why you're not going to move forward with them with whatever the hiring process is within your organization. Another thing about Isabel's experience, which is interesting, is that there wasn't a lot of clarity on the process, right? Number one, a lot of them didn't get back to her. But number 2, what is the process and what is your interviewing process so you can help Gen Z actually set them up for the highest probability of success? When you think about this, think about Gen Z, somebody finding a job. They're probably not only applying to your organization. In this case, Isabel applied to 40 some different organizations. So let's assume, like she mentions in the video, if she's in round 3, but she really wants another job, what does that process look like? What is the time frame? And so I think there's an opportunity for organizations to help Gen Z be more successful with their job hunt if you were more clear and really help them understand what the process looks like so they can, on their end, make sure that they're showing up where they need to show up to set themselves up for success and your organization up for success if this is an applicant that you want to continue the process with and potentially bring on board.
So I started applying and I applied to Stryker, and I know some people that have some connections there. And so they got me the interview, but I only did the first round of it. And that one's a whole month-long interview process.
Okay.
And so I only went past the first round, and then they said they weren't interested. And I did another interview with Red Bull, and they offered me the job, but it just didn't really line up with my work-life balance that I wanted.
Okay.
And so I kind of passed on that. And then this one, I bet I applied to 5 companies and 4 reached back. And then this one was the one I stuck with, was Breakthrough.
Okay. So one of them ghosted you.
Yes.
Okay. So what was that like? Did you send one thing? Did you try to reach out again? Talk to me about that.
I applied to them, and then I think I tried to email them again, and they didn't respond. And that's whenever I kind of got the picture that I wasn't going to be working there.
So when I talked to Isaac, the interesting thing is that his path was completely different than Isabel's. He didn't apply to 40 or 50 different jobs. He applied to 5. And the interesting thing that shows up in this particular clip is that it was a connection that actually got him in, which goes to prove that it doesn't matter what the generation is that connections are very important. Relationships are very important. So if you want a stronger applicant pool, sometimes it's about the network, about who in your organization knows people that might be able to fill those roles that actually can set them up for success moving forward and help you fill the roles that help you set your organization up for success at the same time. Here's another interesting thing. Are Isaac and Isabel green? Do they say things that might not be appropriate? Or is their mindset maybe not where you want them to be? I'll give you that one. But weren't we all there once? Aren't we all a little green as we enter the workforce? And so I think organizations also have to be realistic about expectations and give this generation a little bit of grace. The 2 most important things on Isabel and Isaac when you look at the job hunt is that they were being proactive. They were out there trying. And so I think organizations need to actually meet them in the middle and help this generation find the right roles that will set them up for success and your organization up for success to ultimately drive even better results. Again, you can't lump every Gen Zer into the same bucket. There is a population out there, yes, that might ghost you, that might not show up. But I believe, in my experience of working with this generation, that is a minimum percent, maybe 10 to 15%. The other Gen Zers, they have jobs. They're out there being proactive. They're trying to find their purpose. They're trying to understand how they can be of value and an impact to your organization. And so stop making snap decisions based on a small percentage of this generation and start seeing the totality for what it is. Take each person as they come. Don't automatically have a stigma on this generation that sets you up for failure as you're trying to find applicants to fill your roles.
One of the big thing like in sales is not like is having like openness to be creative. Like I had this account I remember, and I was like, okay, I need to like do something my own way. I want to try something new. I want to see if this works. And I like said to my coworker, like, am I allowed to do that? Or do I just like strictly have to do it by what our manager says? And she was like, I don't know, honestly. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, we're sales reps. We got it. We need to do what we need to do to get this job done. So I went up to my manager and I was like, can I try this? I don't know if you guys have ever done this before. And he was like, you try whatever you want. You come up with an idea, get it approved by me. Like, I trust you. Like, we hired you for a reason. And I like that is so important to me in a job. Like just knowing that my manager like actually hired me because he sees value in me and like knows that I'll bring value to the team. So just like mutual respect and trust. That's so
Okay.
important in my job. I think it's very, very important for an employer to hire like just genuine, friendly people because it makes the work environment just so much better. Like, I think it would be smart to hire someone that's a little less qualified, but they're super friendly, super outgoing, rather than someone that's super, super, super qualified, but you can tell that they're just bleh. Also, here at my job, we have a monthly quota. And if you work your ass off, you meet your quota in the first week, they allow us to take PTO the rest of the month. They're like, you did your job, do what you want. And I love that. Like, and I love that they say that and they actually follow through with it. Also my job, they take like mental health very, very seriously. So if someone needs a day off and they're like working their ass off and they're a hard worker, they're like, take the day off. You do what you need to do to come back tomorrow and get the job done.
Okay.
I value that a lot there as well.
Do you think that some people, and it's not just your generation, right? I don't just want to put you in a box, but do you think some people take advantage of that?
Yes.
Okay, so they do. All right, so there is a balance, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, perfect. So valuing your opinions, your thoughts, your ideas, valuing you as a human being, and creating a likability, kind of comfortable environment that people feel like they can thrive in. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's a good guy, and really, he told me in my interview, he's like, I don't really bother you guys unless you guys have problems. And he's like, and you guys don't really need to contact me every day. So I really only contact my boss once every couple weeks just if I have any questions. But he's kind of like taking a laid off approach. And for a while, I had another manager that would be in the field with us where I'd ask more of my questions, but he recently left and went somewhere else. So with my company, we meet one-on-one, but only once a year. And so I just had that meeting with him, and that was nice to hear any complaints or good things that I've been doing. But I did really like whenever we had the other manager in the field with us, because we could ask him a lot more questions about like what to do with like the problems that we have, because we work in grocery stores a lot, and so it's like we have to help out the people at Schnucks, Walmarts, and Deerbergs as much as our company, and we need to get along with all of them. So the guy in the field, we'd ask a lot of questions to, and he was really good about getting back to us. So
it's interesting in this clip. What I gathered having a conversation with Isabel around this topic was that this generation is not different than any other generation. They want to build strong working relationships. They want an environment that they're comfortable working in. They want that appreciation. They want to know that they're valued. And here's one of the things that I'm challenging all organizations and all generations to really think about is, instead of focusing on differences, focus on what that common ground looks like. This generation wants to know they're adding value and impact. This generation wants that sincere and authentic appreciation, just like boomers, just like millennials, just like Gen X. We all want that type of stuff. And so you can't fix a problem by focusing on a problem. Fix the problem by focusing on the solution. So what are the commonalities? Another thing that she said interesting in this clip is that she likes and they appreciate the freedom and flexibility. Who doesn't? I'm not saying let them completely color outside the lines, but I'm saying give them a little bit of autonomy. There might be some creative thinking. There might be some ideas that they share that really could be beneficial. I think a lot of times organizations are too stuck in, this is always how we've done it. This is the way it has to be done. Don't color outside the lines. And I think this generation, there's a real opportunity to leverage their ideas, their creativeness, to really look at ways that can enhance the value of what they're bringing, drive the impact, and then allow them to really be consciously aware of that value through a lot of different appreciation. That's key for this generation, but I also think that's key for every damn generation. Another topic that we talked about was leader expectations. What do you expect from your leader? And both Isaac and Isabel said some interesting things in these clips you're about to watch. A couple things that really resonate and elevate and to pay attention to is, one, again, they're not different than any other generation. They want feedback. They want growth. This generation is trying to find their way. They're trying to find their purpose. They're trying to find what skills they have that can set them up for success in their career, and they don't get that all the time.
Yeah, for me, so it's my team in some cubicles, and then my manager is like 10 feet away from us. And he just kind of sits back, does his own thing. If we need help, he'll help us. He'll like circle around every hour, see how we're doing. And I like that. I personally would never want a manager that's like up my ass. Like I don't like that. Like on Fridays, we work from home, and like if he's like messaging us like 24/7 all day, like I would hate that. He just lays back, trusts us to do the job. If he sees that our numbers are low for the day, he'll like have us hop on a call and be like, "What's going on?" And I think that's perfect, because I agree with that. But I'm not trying to like shit on my manager, but I value someone that's like very organized and respects me back. 'Cause right now we have bi-weekly one-on-ones to like check our progress, see how we're doing. And sometimes they're bi-weekly, sometimes it's every 3 weeks. It's just always random. Like it's not very structured right now. Like I'll come prepared knowing that I have a one-on-one this week. So I'll like make a Google Doc with things I want to talk about, or if I want him to review a call that I think I could have done better on, whatever. And then the one-on-one just never happens that week. And I like took time to, I don't know, someone that's organized and like values my time as well, because my time's just as important as someone else's. But yeah, sometimes it's once a month, sometimes it's bi-weekly. And as far as feedback goes, I wish that I value like more structure on that as well. My feedback right now is just like random. It's never good feedback. It's only bad. And for me as a person, like I need to hear like when I'm doing good, like it motivates me more.
So let me talk about when the one-on-ones do happen, and you've prepped, and you thought about a call, you thought about things you want to talk about. When they actually occur, do you feel like they're valuable and you look forward to them, or are they kind of check the box? Let's get this done. We had it on the calendar. Let's make it happen. Or is it kind of all over the board?
No, I see my one-on-one going on the calendar and I'm like, ugh, I don't look forward to them at all. We'll like go in, sit down, review, like my numbers. The numbers are never right. They're completely wrong. It's just, oh, like every one-on-one is different. It's always a mess. Like I never know what we're going to be talking about. They piss me off, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if I had a one-on-one bi-weekly, I knew what I was going to talk about. The numbers were correct. Manager is organized. I would love it. I think I would come out of it a better employee.
And so as Isaac talked about, he appreciated somebody that would kind of Sherpa him along and guide him along and things that he would ask questions to. As Isabel said, she doesn't want anybody up her ass, but ultimately she likes that guidance, and she just doesn't want guidance on what she's not doing well. She wants guidance on what she is doing well and what she should do more of. So when it comes to looking at this generation, an interesting thing is that really as a leader, building trust with this generation, helping them create a roadmap and structure that can help their growth, that can help them accomplish their goals, that can help them understand how in which ways they contribute. That's vital to this generation. But again, I don't think it's unique to this generation other than the fact that they are young in their career and they are trying to find their own strong foundation. So ultimately, as we introduce Gen Z into our organizations, how do we create structure around their growth? How do we create structure and give them the guidance and the feedback they need that helps them be motivated and set themselves up for success in the role that we're asking them to do? I think that's key. Another thing that they both said, which maybe it was indirect, but I gathered, is that they really appreciate a good working relationship. They appreciate that trust, that respect, that rapport. Again, I don't think this is unique to any generation, but certainly somebody young in their career and really helping guide them with some structure could really be a win-win-win for your organization. We dive deep into how to retain and lead Gen Z in our Design Leader course. If you want more information on how to be successful doing this, check out the description below. Another thing that I tried to break down in these interviews were myths about this generation. And one of the myths was, do they want to work from home? Do they want to be in the office? Do they want hybrid? And I think this is one that you have to really take by the individual. I don't think we can make a general assumption of this entire generation. You'll hear Isaac and Isabel both talk about a hybrid approach, but they also both say that they enjoy being in the office. Another key thing that came out of this was choices. I think that they want the ability to choose and give them the respect that they're going to make the right choice. I know that's dangerous, but I ultimately believe that if you give them a fine reputation to live into, most of this generation will make the right choice. The last thing to really pay attention to, which again is kind of an underlying topic in this clip, is they want you to focus on the outcomes, not necessarily the time. And I think too many organizations think about checking the box. You have to be in the office. You have to be there 8 to 5. You have to be there a certain amount of hours. You have to show your face. There's a lot of that. And ultimately, it's about the results. It doesn't matter how much time or where they're at as long as they're getting the results. Now, I know that might be job specific or role specific, but ultimately, how are you setting it up for the right candidate in the right situation for them to be successful? It's probably not an either or. It's probably not absolutes either way. There's a lot of and conversations. How do we create an environment and set them up for success and make sure the organization is getting what they need to get to ultimately create that win-win-win?
Hybrid for sure. Definitely hybrid. My friends and I are all in agreement that, just a little bit of freedom as well. Like if you're struggling this month and not meeting your numbers and you need to go into the office, go into the office. If you're doing well and you work better from home, work from home. Like whatever it takes to do your job doesn't matter.
Okay.
I think that's important because some people I know some people in my office, like when we're cold calling and you're in a cubicle, and there's a million voices around you, you're not going to get shit done.
Mm-hmm.
If you go home and work at your office from home, I think that's how it should be. As long as like you're doing what you're, I don't know, but I personally love going into the office. I like if I'm at home, I'm gonna scroll on TikTok for 2 hours. Like, but I personally like being in office, but definitely like my friend group hybrid is the answer.
So it kind of depends on the person, I guess. For me, I like to be in person and I like to see people I work with, but I do know a lot of people my age would love to work remote and just, or hybrid, either one, but to where they could just kind of be at home doing their own job and it's, I guess, more flexible for them. Something like that would probably be better for a lot of people my age. But I do know a lot of people would also like to be the face to face in person work.
Okay.
So for sure,
Okay.
it's more, I would say it's probably about 50-50. Some people really like working remote. And then I think people like myself, I really like kind of moving around and not just sitting behind a desk all day, maybe talking to people, stuff like that.
Next, we're going to talk about the myth of Gen Z just job hopping and that being a stigma for them.
In my opinion, I think it's a misconception just
Okay.
because whenever I learn something about a job and I've already got my foot kind of in the door and I've got connections within the company, I personally would not strive to move if they were taking care of me and if I was taking care of them. But obviously, if something isn't going right with the company, I would move. But I'm more of a loyal person where if the company's treating me right and I like the work, then I will stay there until I no longer like it or they're no longer treating me good.
So as you just saw, when it comes to job hopping, it's a misconception. Again, it's not a one size fits all. We always kind of label this generation that they're going to job hop for the next 30 years. Maybe, but maybe not. It comes down to, are they valued? It comes down to, are they growing? It comes down to, do they really understand their impact? Is there an environment that they can thrive in? Again, not different than a lot of different generations. Stop focusing on the problems and what's the differences and start focusing on the common ground. Everybody wants this stuff. So when you're hiring Gen Z, think about how are you creating an environment that can create a long-term relationship for a win-win situation, that you're helping them grow, that they're adding value, that they're driving the results you're asking them to drive. You do that, and I'm not saying that it's an absolute that everybody's going to stay, but there's a higher probability that this generation will stick around if they see that. On the other side, if they don't see it, they're going to bolt, and you're going to blame them, but ultimately, you might want to look in the mirror.
And I'll say with like Red Bull too, they were going to offer me more money than what I make now. And I chose the work-life balance over working more and earning more.
Okay.
So
it's not that money's not important, because I mean, we all need money,
It
right?
is,
It's not that
yeah.
money's not important, but it's not like at the top and it's going to dictate everything in the decisions that you make within your career path.
Yeah, so with Red Bull, they were going to have me go to the warehouse and start my shift at 5:30 a.m.
Okay.
And then we wouldn't get back to the warehouse until about 5 p.m. And
Okay.
so that was a pretty long day. And they said that in the interview, they said you'd probably be working around 50 to 60 hours a week. And so I appreciate the honesty from them, but I wasn't really interested in that. And what I would prefer, I prefer 8 hours, obviously, a day. With me, I like what I do right now where I start really early in the morning and I get done early in the day. But most people in my generation, I assume, probably wouldn't like that. And they probably would like it to start a little bit later and do an 8-hour shift from there. But everybody's different. I really like starting early and getting done early. So it's not that we obviously want to work a job that we like, but a lot of us, we want to do what we like outside of work and want to get not done with work as soon as possible, but just accomplish what we can during work so we can enjoy ourselves outside of work.
I brought up this statistic earlier, but as you see with Isabel and Isaac, both of them really prove this to be true. This generation does prioritize work-life balance, which I'll give you, maybe is a difference than the boomers, right? The boomers really focused on work being the priority. I think work-life balance for this generation is important. So what are we doing to create that flexibility? It certainly is a balance, as Isaac talks about. It might be money. Money's important. We all need the money. But what is that balance where they feel like they have a life outside of work? And what can organizations do that help them create that environment that they can live into? It's something that's key, but I think we as organizations have to really pay attention and not just discount the work-life balance, pay attention to it and create environments where this shows up And you'll get more efficiency, more effectiveness, and better results out of this generation if you can create an environment where they feel like there's work, but there's also a life. So what does all this boil down to? Well, here's a couple things to think about. I think if you want this generation to be successful, I really believe it's time to look in the mirror. This is not 1995. This is not the same environment. And if you're not willing to change, then you will still be stuck and you'll probably be blaming them versus blaming you as an organization. Plus, you're competing with different facets in different spaces. There's more entrepreneurs today than there was 20, 30 years ago. There's content creation. There's YouTube millionaires. There's a lot of options for this generation that's not just all about finding a career for 30 years. And I think it's time that we wake up. Another thing that this comes down to is stop making general assumptions. Stop already labeling this generation as they don't want to work, they're lazy, they don't show up. Just stop it. Even if you have a benign attitude towards each applicant that comes in, and then you can make decisions based on the way they respond and based on the way they interact with you, that is going to be key. I think a lot of times our wounds are self-inflicted when it comes to this. I think a lot of times it's self-fulfilling prophecy. We say this generation doesn't work. We say this generation doesn't show up. And then we do things that don't allow them to show up or do the work, and we prove ourselves right. So ultimately, what shifts can you make that allow you to create a win-win-win for this generation? It's not all about you shifting either. The Generation Z, yes, they have to shift. Yes, they have to be willing to flex. But I think if we're willing to flex and they're willing to flex, we're going to find a better environment. We're going to find win-win-win situations. And you're going to find that as this generation continues to enter the workforce, you're going to be happier, more efficient, more effective, and better results if you start flexing now. Now that you know what Gen Z wants at work, I'm going even further on my best retention strategies in 2025. Watch the video and stop losing your best talent.